The UK housing crisis is not simply about a lack of homes, it's about affordability. Across the country, individuals and families are grappling with the stark reality of a housing market that seems increasingly out of reach. Sky-high property prices, coupled with stagnant wages, have created a chasm between aspiration and reality, leaving many feeling trapped in a cycle of rent and uncertainty. This crisis is not confined to bustling cities. Even smaller towns and rural areas are feeling the pinch as demand outstrips supply and prices continue to soar. The dream of home ownership, once a cornerstone of British society, now feels like a distant prospect for many, particularly young people and those on lower incomes. The human cost of this crisis is immense, manifesting in rising homelessness, generational inequality, and a sense of despair among those who feel priced out of their own communities. The housing market's current trajectory is unsustainable, demanding urgent attention and innovative solutions to prevent further social and economic damage. The current state of affairs is not merely a matter of market forces, it's a reflection of policy choices made over decades. To understand the roots of this crisis, we must delve into the historical context that has shaped the UK's housing landscape. Only by acknowledging past missteps can we hope to chart a new course towards a fairer and more sustainable future for housing in the UK. The seeds of the UK's current housing crisis were sown in the aftermath of World War II. Faced with a devastated housing stock, the government embarked on an ambitious programme of house building, driven by a social democratic vision of providing affordable homes for all. The 1947 Town and Country Planning Act, a landmark piece of legislation, aimed to control urban sprawl and promote planned development. While well-intentioned, this act inadvertently laid the groundwork for future problems by introducing a complex and often restrictive planning system. The post-war consensus on housing began to unravel in the 1980s under Margaret Thatcher's Conservative government. Driven by a belief in free markets and individual responsibility, Thatcher's policies led to a significant reduction in public housing construction. The Right to Buy scheme, while empowering some tenants to become homeowners, depleted the stock of social housing, contributing to the affordability crisis we see today. The decline in public housing was accompanied by a deregulation of the financial sector, which fueled a surge in house prices. This shift towards treating housing as a financial asset rather than a social good has had profound consequences, creating a system where property is increasingly seen as a vehicle for wealth accumulation rather than a place to live. The legacy of these policies continues to cast a long shadow on the UK housing market, shaping the challenges we face today. The political landscape shifted dramatically in July 2024 with the Labour Party's decisive victory. Led by Keir Starmer, the new government has pledged to tackle the housing crisis head-on, promising to build 300,000 new homes annually, an ambitious target that, if achieved, would represent a significant increase in housing supply. Starmer's vision centres around expanding public housing, revitalising urban areas, and making home ownership a more attainable goal for ordinary people. However, despite the government's good intentions, scepticism lingers. Critics argue that simply increasing housing supply will not be enough to address the deep-rooted affordability issues at the heart of the crisis. They point to the need for a more nuanced approach, one that tackles the complex interplay of factors driving up prices, including speculation, land hoarding, and the lack of truly affordable housing options. The government's commitment to tackling the housing crisis will be tested in the years ahead. Delivering on its ambitious targets will require navigating complex political terrain, challenging vested interests, and making difficult choices. The success or failure of these efforts will have far-reaching consequences, not only for the millions of people struggling to find affordable housing, but for the very fabric of British society. Attributing blame for the UK's housing crisis is no simple task. It's not a case of pointing fingers at a single culprit, but rather acknowledging the confluence of factors that have created this perfect storm. The government undoubtedly bears a significant responsibility. Decades of underinvestment in public housing, coupled with a failure to adequately regulate the private rented sector, have created a system that is failing to meet the needs of citizens. Local authorities, too, must share some of the burden. Restrictive planning policies, often driven by the concerns of existing homeowners, NIMBYism, have stifled development and constrained housing supply. This reluctance to embrace new housing has exacerbated the affordability crisis, particularly in areas with high demand. Developers, motivated by profit, have often prioritized luxury developments and high-end properties over affordable housing options, further skewing the market. Investors, both domestic and foreign, have piled into the housing market, viewing property as a safe haven asset class, driving up prices and pushing home ownership further out of reach for many. Ultimately, the UK's housing crisis is a complex problem with no easy solutions. It's the result of a collective failure, a web of interconnected issues that have been allowed to fester for far too long. Addressing this crisis demands a concerted effort from all stakeholders, a willingness to challenge the status quo, and a commitment to putting the needs of people before profit.